Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's event. So happy to have you. My name is Ruby Bailey. I am a 3-year resident of the city of Columbia, and most recently am the former immediate past executive editor at the Columbia Missourians. And it is my honor tonight to be with you for this presentation and to introduce our esteemed panelists and guests. And we're going to have a fantastic conversation about voting and how we get that done. So hopefully you guys will also have some questions because we're anxious to hear from you and as well as to answer your questions and engage with you. So no further ado, I would like to introduce our guests for tonight. We have Lauri Ealom, who is joining us all the way from Kansas City this evening, and she will be talking to us as well as we have Thomas Hicks, who is in Boston this evening. And if I would love it if the two of you would just introduce yourselves just a little bit, give us your titles and a little bit about what you do. So Lauri, if you could start, I would appreciate that.
Okay, I'm Lauri Ealom, and I am the Democratic Director here at the Kansas City Board of Election Commissioners. And in a nutshell, without doing Election Administrator 101 class, I am the person that facilitates all of the elections within the Kansas City area. Wonderful. So in other words, we hold the events for Kansas City that happen to be elections.
Thank you. All righty. And Thomas? I don't know
I
if I
am.
Tom. So Thomas.
Tom is fine. Tom is fine. Tom is fine. Just not Tommy, because I am the Vice Chair of the United States Election Assistance Commission, and our role is to help jurisdictions facilitate elections more thoroughly and in a better manner. Our agency came about after the 2000 election, and we are a bipartisan agency, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. And last year we gave out over $400 million to improve the elections process. Our biggest role is basically serving as a clearinghouse. So gathering information from jurisdictions and disseminating that out to other jurisdictions so they can see what other states and jurisdictions are doing and sort of best practices roles.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you both so very much again for those introductions and again for joining us tonight to talk about voting. We all know how important it is, and I think we can't do too many of these things. So I would also like to thank, as we get going, Brianna Lennon, who was doing a lot of great work for us here in Boone County. So with no further ado, I'd like to jump right on into the questions. And of course, again, we invite the public to ask questions as well. And we would love to hear from you. So do not hesitate. We'll make sure we get to those questions as soon as possible and as best we can. So to kick things off, and I would like, if both of you would like to comment, but first, if Lauri, this question would start with you, if that's okay. Can you tell us, please, what the general structure of voting is in terms of the responsibility for each level of government?
The general structure for voting?
Yes.
Okay, tell me, give me a little bit more on that.
Well, just the general structure in terms of responsibilities for each level of government. So for what you do, what is the general structure of voting? How do you, what is it that you all do, or what is it that you do, and how does your role fit in to the overall? I go to my polling place and cast my ballot. How do you help make that happen?
Okay. Well, I thought based on how I saw it, Tom was supposed to answer the question first, but so I was kind of thrown off here. Nonetheless, what we do here at the Kansas City Board of Elections is we not only facilitate all of the venues that we will use for polling locations, we also receive all of the registrations, the affidavits. We have deputy registrars. A lot of locations in Kansas City don't do deputy registrar training, but we actually do train people to go out and do our naturalization ceremonies, register folks there, to essentially provide them with the service of voting. Overall, here in Kansas City, we have about 320,000 people, but we only have 220,000 registered voters. Now, that does not necessarily mean that a lot of those people are not active. Kansas City is somewhat of a transient environment, so voters tend to move a lot, so it's hard to keep up with them. Essentially, my overall job here at the Kansas City Board of Elections is to facilitate fair, fast, efficient elections that are not fraudulent. I have to say that because there's a lot of talk about voter fraud. So we are very diligent about our jobs here. And all of the election administrators that I know personally are just as diligent about our jobs. One of the things that I think was important to speak about the 2020 election cycle, just the whole year of 2020, we were in the midst of a pandemic. None of us had seen anything like that before. So we had to prepare differently, not only for the election, but our job has never been to protect the people from a virus. So I will say that we did an awesome job. Here at our office, we were one of the few that did not have an outbreak during the pandemic, and I had over 220 seasonal staff that worked with us during this time. We initially, my OCD did not allow me to wait for funding, so we basically made all of our sputum barriers out of PVC pipe and 55 gauge upholstery vinyl. My grandfather was an upholsterer. So a lot of the things that we did here in Kansas City, I know other people in our area basically said, hey, do you mind showing us how to do that? Because basically we did it, we designed on a dime. So it's kind of a DIY situation going on in Kansas City Board of Elections.
All right, wonderful. And Thomas, if you could talk to us a bit about the EEC and what it does, the EAC and what it does. Thank you.
Yep. So there's a lot of confusion about our agency, the Election Assistance Commission, and the Federal Elections Commission. The Federal Elections Commission deals mostly with campaign finance and the financing of elections and candidates. And we do everything else in terms of helping with the design of polling places. I view it more of A through Z. So from voter registration all the way back to vote counting. So we help with trying to get people registered to vote in terms of National Voter Registration Day, which is coming up in September. We held a National Poll Worker Recruitment Week in September of last year to help recruit poll workers because the average age of poll workers was well over 60. And those were folks who were very susceptible to the pandemic in terms of being a vulnerable category of individuals. And we help with the certification of voting equipment. In February of this year, we unanimously voted to approve the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines 2.0, which are for the voting equipment. So if you see a voting machine in your jurisdiction that has an EAC approved sticker on it, it's basically like the best housing, the best house cleaning. I forget the exact name of that, but it's the best house cleaning sticker that they used to put on things. So we would basically say that this machine functions in terms of accuracy, reliability, and other aspects of it as well. So you hear a lot about people talking about fraudulent voting and how the system is rigged and this and that. One of the things that we say is be a part of it from the inside. Become a poll worker. See it from the inside. Don't just sit around and complain about things. Be someone who does something about it. Anyone can sit back and complain and say that they don't like something going on, but be that person or that number of people who actually make change. So become a poll worker, run for elections, or even volunteer for get out to vote campaigns. So help people get to the polls so they can exercise their rights to vote as well. So the EAC helps with getting that information to other jurisdictions. So for instance, we all hear about large jurisdictions like Chicago and LA that have a number of workers who are able to help run their elections. But most election offices are just 1 and 2 people. And those people are basically doing 9 other jobs where they are the bus driver, the city clerk, and also running payroll and other things like that as well. So we try to take that, alleviate some of that strain of trying to figure out what the best practices are and put those things together so that they can ease their world a little bit better and so that people have more confidence in the elections process.
Wonderful. You also mentioned earlier, I believe it was in your introduction, that the organization came into being right after the 2000 election. And I'm just wondering if for some of our audience members, if you could talk just a bit about what made that necessary. Now, I was a reporter in Miami watching Hanging Chad, so I kind of get it. But what was the impetus for that, if you would share a little bit?
Right. So in Florida 2000, it came down to Florida basically winning the election for either Al Gore or George W. Bush. And it came down to basically 537 votes. And because of the way that votes were being counted on paper, where the questions were, well, does this equal a vote? Because it's either punched all the way through, half marked, or other various things that no one really knew how to define what a vote was. Our agency was basically born out of that. So it basically said, we are going to define what a vote is. We're going to have what voter registration is. We're going to have an electronic voter registration file and have that updated and not basically throw people off the rolls unless they haven't voted for a number of years or if they've moved and so forth, but give people an opportunity to still cast a ballot if they are in what they feel is the right jurisdiction. So allowing for an absentee ballot as well, not absentee ballot, but allowing for a way to vote if you feel that you're in the right jurisdiction, but have that vote counted only if you can come back and prove that you were correctly in that jurisdiction.
A challenge ballot, is that?
So it's called different things in different jurisdictions, and this is why I'm not sure what it's called in Missouri.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you. Very good. Thank you both so much. My next question, what sort of trends or questions do you hear from folks that seem to be the same across local and state lines? So are there topics or trends or questions, areas of interest from people that you hear a trend or you kind of hear that consistently throughout the state or localities? Either of you may go.
Sure. I want to clarify for the Missourians what the type of ballot is that Tom's talking about. For us, it's a provisional ballot here in Missouri. And if there's it's basically used if there's a issue with the registration. And that way the person can cast the ballot and we do all the research on the back end. So we don't want to disenfranchise someone and not allow them to vote, but we do all the research back here, and a ticket with a serial number is given to the voter so that they can then call back and check. I just wanted to give, because in Missouri, that's what it's called. And Tom's all over the United States and it's called something different everywhere. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Now, sure, to talk about some of the questions that, being an election administrator, Brianna can attest to this. When people know what you do, they always ask, it's the same questions I get all the time. What are absentee ballots? Do absentee ballots count? Can I vote if I'm a felon? Do we have early voting? Are there mail-in voting? And all of those things are very valid questions, because here's the thing, the language is different and people call some of the same things different things across the country. So I'll touch first on absentee voting. In Missouri, in the state of Missouri, we do not have early voting. We have what is called technically, we don't even have mail-in voting either. We only had those for a short period of time, and that expired on December 31st. But we do have absentee voting. Now, absentee voting requires, it requires you to have one of 6 excuses. There was a 7th excuse that was put in place during the pandemic, but that is no longer an option for us at this time. So it's basically 6 weeks ahead of time. It's done one or two ways. You can request the absentee ballot application. And now let me clarify this. When you request that application, people say, well, why do I have to request it? Why can't you send it out to everybody? Well, It would be nice if we could. There are ways, and there are more liberal states that are able to do those things. But in the state of Missouri, and I'm going to speak specifically to Missouri because I assume most of our followers are from Missouri. In Missouri, you have to request that. And one of the things that absentee application serves, it serves as a check and balance for us because we scan that in, and that signature verification on the back end is also used when you vote. So when you sign in and you check in, those can be cross-referenced. So that's also a way in which we use it as a check and balance. Then the next question is, are absentee ballots counted? Absentee ballot is just like voting on election day. The only ballot that is not cast into the ballot marking device is what we call them, are those provisional ballots. Those aren't counted at the moment in which the ballot is completed. One of the other questions that I get across the board, well, hey, I was a felon, I'm not on probation anymore, I've served my time, and I've served my probationary terms. Can I vote? Yes, in the state of Missouri, you can vote. The challenge is that there's a lot of misinformation. Things are different from state to state. So in Missouri, you can vote if you are off of your supervised release program. You are able to vote. Tom, is there anything that I missed?
No, I think you hit a lot of the topics. I would equate it a little differently in terms of trends, because I think that I was taking it more in terms of 2020 and thinking about how there were so many people who wanted to. Let me start from here. In 2020, there were two stories that were being told. Mm-hmm. Every day we heard about the pandemic. Every single day. That was the first topic of discussion on the news. The second story that was every day after that was about the election. Mm-hmm. And so people got engaged and they wanted to make sure that their votes counted. And so what were they doing for that? They were trying to check their registrations. They were making sure their registrations were up to date, making sure that they had the right information about their candidates and so forth. But in order to do the registration, you have to be qualified to do that. And so that's where the points that you were making come right into effect of, well, am I a felon? Am I in the right jurisdiction? And so forth and so on. So I think that those were, it's more of a domino effect of these are the reasons why I wanted to vote, and am I qualified to do that? And if I am qualified, what steps do I need to take to make sure that I'm on the rolls?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just quickly, either of you have those questions in your experience? Have they changed over time, or have they been consistently pretty much that's what people have asked? And I know, Thomas, you mentioned 2020 and some of the things that were kind of like domino effects of what was going on. But for you, Lauri, were there any of those questions that have changed, or they pretty much been the same for a while?
They've pretty much been the same, and they're asked actually more frequently. And part of the challenge for us was there were special provisions in 2020 that were put into place that are no longer in place. So what I tried to do in sharing with you all today is not share with you those provisions, because I don't want folks confused. Because truth be told, we were confused, because every other day there was a new document that we saw or a new email that changed what our interpretation of it is. So if you confuse the election administrators and the election officials, the public is going to be confused too. So we spent most of our time basically putting out fires based on misinformation that was put out. One of the things, there's a lot of organizations do have it in their heart to assist with the process. But there are also organizations that come about during this time that are to derail the process. So you are always, for example, for me, I had thousands of absentee ballots or mail-in ballots that were not notarized properly. I didn't say weren't notarized, but properly. Notary 101 says that you have to sign your name and put your notary stamp, your commission stamp. I had thousands that didn't have commission stamps. So that would lead me to believe there's a problem with the notaries. Now, people mobilized to assist us with the process. You know, the mobile notaries, they would go to people's homes. But it in my eyes, some of those that mobilized were not necessarily mobilizing in the best interest of voting, because if you don't notarize a ballot properly, by law, I am not supposed to accept that ballot. But based on the way I operate, I wanted to see all the early ballots, and I started to see a trend. So immediately I started to create a spreadsheet, and I started to call the commission's office at the Secretary of State's office and call those folks, hey, you need to come in and notarize this ballot, because it's not appropriate or fair to the voter to be disenfranchised after they have properly done every aspect, requested the application, completed the ballot, taken it to the notary, and the notary doesn't put a commission stamp on. So I tried to stay away from the 2020 saga, because 2020 is very different. We don't even have the same provisions. We're back to same old absentee, provisional ballots, and can I vote if I'm a felon? And if I move, what do I do? How do I change my registration? All of those types of things. I've gone back to the basics, because what happened last year and the provisions that were put in place are no longer in place.
All right, well, thank you so much. My next question, what's the most important thing election administrators believe that a new or potential voter should do to get ready for an election?
Okay. I believe, you want to go ahead, Tom?
No, because I was going to say I have a different. I know I'm going to have a different perspective because I'm going to look at it as I can go first if you want.
Well, yeah, you go first, and I guess for the Facebook followers that are listening to us, Tom, the EAC works all throughout the United States. I'm localized, so what Tom gives you is a broad base based on what he does, and what I give you is what we do here in Missouri. So it's applicable to the Facebook followers that are from Missouri versus those that may be in other parts of the country.
So what I would say a new voter should do is go to the polls educated in terms of basically seeing what those machines are before they get to the polls. You have a lot of folks who have errors with their ballots because they're not used to the voting equipment. A lot of the machines are error proof and will tell you that you haven't filled out a number of races, or you try to overvote a race and things like that if you are inserting paper into these machines. But I would say that the one of the things that's great about election administrators is they allow for you to come and see the testing and accuracy of these machines beforehand. They allow you to volunteer to become poll workers so you can learn about these things as well. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and said, well, I saw it on Facebook, therefore it must be true. There was a lot of disinformation out there. And so I say, learn who your trusted sources are. Just because someone's on Twitter doesn't mean that they're a news reporter, or that they're giving you accurate information, or that they want to give you accurate information. In 2016, we saw a foreign nation try to give a lot of disinformation to our American citizens in terms of voting, to the point where the Department of Homeland Security elevated elections as critical infrastructure, basically saying that if our elections are attacked, they need to be brought back in line as quickly as our banks, our waterways, our electrical grid, and so forth. So I would say that, in terms of new voters, and I have a couple new voters in my house as well, as my daughter will be 18 pretty soon. And I say, make sure that you don't listen to mom, don't listen to dad, listen to yourself and get your trusted sources on who you believe on getting that information out there. So that's what I would say in terms of new voters and getting what their sort of, what the best things that they should be doing out there, which should be.
Well, I'll add to education is key. And I would say first, I tell you to check your voter registration status, of course. Here in Kansas City, you can go to kcb.org and check your status, or you can go to sos.mo.gov and check your status. Check your status and make sure you have the correct address where you're currently living. And then also, we have sample ballots. Every election authority in every state has a sample ballot. What we did, and most of us in Missouri have specialized sample ballots. For us, we just initially 10 years, 15 years ago, we just had the whole sample ballot. Well, that didn't really narrow it down because people still didn't know who they were supposed to vote on. So what we did is narrowed it down by zip code, your jurisdiction, your specific ward and precinct. So once you put in your date of birth, you go to our website, you put in your date of birth and your last name, and that takes you to the specific sample ballot, the ballot that you will be voting on. Now, I always encourage people to print those ballots out, sample ballots out, mark them. That can be your study guide. That's also a way in which you see who you're voting for. So then there's other outside entities, because we're not supposed to provide you candidate information. So you go to the other resources and find out the information. You can go to the legislative site and look and see how people voted on certain issues that are important to you. There are other entities that do provide excellent candidate information, but that's not what we do. So it's unfortunate that we can't provide you anything other than who is on your ballot. Take it with you, use it as a study guide, and your voting experience. I always encourage them because their voting experience is streamlined. It goes by quickly. I think it was in 2018 that we had a 2-page 19-inch ballot with an 8 font. So we had to deploy magnifiers because if I gauge everything on whether I can read it, if I can't read it, I assume with my HDs, if I can't read it easily and it's a 5 font, then I know the voters aren't going to be able to read it. So this is a way that you can expedite the process by printing it out. If you are in our jurisdiction, we also will, if you come down to the election board, we'll print it out for you if you don't have the capabilities at home to do that, because we want you to be informed. Know where your polling place is. Now, we've centralized our polls, and what centralized voting means is that you can vote anywhere in Kansas City within your jurisdiction at any polling place. And we enabled that process through the ballot marking devices. And it's key that I say ballot marking devices, because that means all the different ballot styles. Because last year we lost most of our polls, so we had to cut down to basically half. So we needed to centralize them. So if you saw a vote here, you can pull over and vote, because all of the ballot style, the different various ballot styles are housed in a ballot marking device, and that is brought up by your ward and precinct. So I say, come by, look at the equipment. Tom said, that we do test. We do a public test before every election. That gives you the opportunity to come by, ask us questions, stand closely to the materials, the equipment, and we allow you to feed in the ballots to help. I mean, we have people that we allow to help us, because hands-on, I just believe in hands-on. You just come with a level of comfort that you don't if you're just watching it on TV, because the equipment is really made for a second grader, but it looks complicated. I mean, I had at one point some younger children, that the staff's children, and we let them play on the equipment because we want to acclimate them, and they were able to do it. And it was just voting on dogs. We did a test deck on what's your favorite dog, and they all know the dogs. They can see the dog pictures. And so I suggested voters go to the public test. That's key. We've centralized the polls, so that's another one. Make sure you have your valid ID. You got to have some form of ID. And if you don't have valid ID, you're going to have to do the provisional ballot. Now, does the provisional ballot count? Yes. As I said before, and I'm reiterating this point, we do the research on the back end. So yes, your provisional will count as long as you're registered in the correct jurisdiction. And we have the information accurate in our system, it will count. So I go back to that. Let me see. People really get, Tom mentioned the ballot marking devices. And I want to say that the ballot marking devices kind of are foolproof because, as he said, they alert you to, hey, you missed this race. And it gives you can do it 100 times. I've seen people go back and 2 or 3, 4 times while they're voting and they've missed something and they want a little more time to think about it. So it lets you know, you can review your whole ballot. And then when it prints it out, you can see everything you voted on. Now, if you accidentally miss something, we can spoil that ballot and you can vote again. But it's key that you do look at the items, you do use your review so that you make the accurate choices based on who you intended to vote on.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I learned a lot.
I can go on and on. I get passionate.
Thomas, did you have any other thoughts, or that wrapped it up?
The one thing I would add is only one thing is that I want to make sure that we talk about those folks because we were talking about the need to have these sorts of things. If you live long enough, you will have some form of disability in your life. And so the EAC was based on ensuring that those who have disabilities can vote independently and privately. And so that's a huge, huge issue to make sure that you go into a polling place and that you can cast your vote without needing assistance. But if you do need assistance federally in a federal election, you can choose who that person is. You can have a relative go in, or you can ask the poll worker to go in. One of the best things that our agency did, and I don't think it's going to come up because it's going to come up as paper. Yeah, it's not. But we did these cards. These cards are, I don't know if it's going to come up. Well, no, it's not going to come up. But these cards that I'm holding in my hand are, you're able to put them in your wallet. And it's for people who have disabilities to say what their rights are. So you can seek assistance, you can bring someone to help you vote, and you have to have, every polling place has to have one machine that's accessible for those people who have disabilities. And we did this with a QR code so you can save it on your phone. We also did it in Braille. And I say that because in a couple of weeks, we're going to be celebrating the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And a few weeks ago, we celebrated the 20th Amendment to the Constitution, which gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. So those two things are sandwiched in. So that expanded the number of people who can vote and allows for, and hopefully that people can take advantage of that. So if you don't take advantage of it, someone will take advantage of you.
Yes. I want to piggyback, if you don't mind, off of what Tom said. We invested considerably in different assistive type of devices. Our voting equipment, like Tom mentioned earlier, the EAC and the state of Missouri has approved it. So therefore, our panels that you can use to vote, it's a little box. It does have Braille on it. We have sip and puff. So say, for instance, you don't have arms and you're not able to utilize arms or hands like others. We've got the sip and puff where small burst of air provides you the ability to mark your ballot. We also have the rocker panels where if, say, for instance, you have to, it's like a tapping. So we have every type of assistive device here in Kansas City so that voters, differently abled voters, can cast their ballots independent of even the assistance that Tom offers that they're all eligible to have. But we've made it so that if they don't want anyone to assist and you do have some challenges, that you're able to cast your ballot still without the assistance of anyone.
Wonderful. Okay. The next question, and we kind of touched on these things a little bit, but how can voters feel more confident and informed when casting their ballot?
I think Lauri hit on all those points of making sure that you make sure your voter registration is up to date. Make sure that you find out about your candidates, because there's a lot of organizations out there that allow you to know about the candidates and the ballot measures that may be on there. But also, there's ways to ensure now that you can, if you vote, and I'm going back to 2020 because I think of it as in the last 20 years, we've gotten used to doing things from home, whether or not that's sending mail from home, which is now called email, or banking from home, which is called, online banking, or shopping from home through Amazon or eBay or all these other things. People are getting used to voting from home as well. And so to ensure that your vote is cast and counted correctly, you can go on various websites, and I'm not sure how Missouri does it, but for some states, they allow you to look up your vote. It doesn't tell you who you voted for, but says that your vote was counted. And so I think making sure that you educate yourself on those ways to ensure that your vote is being counted, so you don't feel disenfranchised, and so that you don't feel that you've been taken advantage of by disinformation and so forth.
The only thing that I would add to what Tom said is, here in Kansas City, you can go back on our website. We had to kind of rework our website, and for those Facebook followers that are watching us, everything that we do, we are a profession that is extremely underfunded. So we are always trying to provide the best service with no money. That's just a fact. So therefore, we had to rework some things. So you could go on our website. We wrote a code so that you could go on our website and you could see if you sent in your absentee ballot, that your absentee ballot was received, or your absentee ballot was sent, that your vote was counted. And then you can call us. You can even follow up with us and ask for your voting record, and that so that you can see that we don't provide who you voted for. We just know that so that you can be assured that your vote counted. So that is your right to request a copy in person of your voting record, to ensure that you're all of the elections that you cast a ballot, that your votes did count.
And I want to add one quick thing to that. And most people hate to get these phone calls from candidates. And they hate to keep getting these ballot measures sent to their house. One way that those things stop is when you cast your ballot. And I know that Missouri doesn't have early voting per se, but when I vote and I cast my ballot, because early or absentee, I immediately stop getting that mail things, because both parties look at the rolls to see who has voted and if their votes have already been cast. And so therefore, they're not going to expend their monies to go to people who've already cast their votes. They're going to those folks who haven't. So if you haven't cast your votes, this is when you're getting more phone calls. This is when you're getting more mail-in materials. So if you don't want those things, cast your ballot early.
All right, well, thank you.
And I will say,
yes,
the underfunding issue is huge. One of my fellow commissioners is from your great state, and he talks about how Kansas City spends $70 million per year on pothole fixing. And yet at that point, our budget was less than $10 million. Yeah. And so
and they're not fixed
in our country.
Oh, I'm sorry. A little outburst. Sorry, excuse me.
And so for one jurisdiction to spend $70 million on potholes, and a national government agency was receiving less than $10 million to help with our democracy, was just appalling. And so since that time, we've gotten more money, but it's still not enough. We gave out $425 million last year, which sounds like a lot, but when you divide that by 50 states and six territories in the District of Columbia, it doesn't work out to be that much money. And so we need to fund our elections like we want our elections to be looked at as they are around the world, as the best in the world.
Okay. Lauri, would you talk to us a bit about what happens when someone submits their voter registration? Like, what happens to that once they submit it? So from your perspective, the safeguards and whatnot that are in place when someone
Sure.
wants to vote.
Sure. Once we receive your registration document, we record it when it's received. And then we scan it into our registration. We scan your registration information into our record keeping system, which then links it to the statewide Missouri database. And this process typically happens between 7 and 10 days. Now, after we receive the registration, because it goes through a whole process. Now, after it's scanned into the database, I'm just going to use Kansas City, but we all kind of do certain processes the same way. We will typically mail you a letter and say we received your registration. Now, the letter may look a little different. It's just depending on how you register to vote. So if like voters register with someone with an organization that's like a deputy registrar, or you register here at the Kansas City board or Boone County, it's a little different. We see your ID at that time. So we've already verified. ID is already verified because that's one of the checks and balances that we utilize. And it's not that we verify, we use your date of birth, and we have a database that interfaces with the DMV that provides us with certain information to say that it's really you. Now, if you register online, a postcard application, the way that you can avoid, you can print that out and send it in by mail and enclose your ID with it, because it goes into a pending status until we have some form of identification, some valid form of ID. Now, that does not mean here in Missouri, it doesn't have to be a Missouri driver's license necessarily, or a state issued ID. We still have other things that you can use that serve as valid identification. However, if you send this ID in, if you register online, if you print that online app down, mail it in with your ID, I would suggest you do that, because in doing so, what happens is you avoid getting in the pending status. So it's just better that you do it that way, as opposed to just hoping that we'll send you a letter. And all of these things are done. It's important that you look at your registration deadlines, okay? Because we would hate for you to come upon a deadline and not be registered. Now, one of the challenges for us is that our online apps did not initially come to us. Because we're in Kansas City and there's several jurisdictions, they send them to one place, they mail them to one place, and then they distribute them to all of us. So what I would prefer is that you print off the online application and mail it directly to the election board, so it doesn't have to be distributed through too many different hands before it gets to us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
both so very, very much. This has been so interesting and just informative. Brianna, were you going to introduce Tyrone to us? We have a wonderful video that we get to watch in a couple of seconds. So she was going to introduce Tyrone to us so that we can watch his video.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Lauri and Tom, for doing this and helping voters be more engaged and educated. And part of what we're doing with these series is, because they're now saved on Facebook Live, we can play them closer to elections as well. So hopefully this will be a good kind of evergreen conversation that we can have. But we did, since this is the last of 3 conversations we've had, I wanted to introduce Tyrone, who is the creator of this really fabulous music video and song that was produced last year to try to get voters educated and excited about voting. And so I wanted to give him a second. I'm going to do a screen share, but I'm going to give him a second to talk about how he created the song in the first place.
Good job, Tyrone. I liked it. I watched it just while we've been on Zoom.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Definitely want to say thanks for having me, and it was an honor and pleasure to work with Brianna on producing the video. My company, Beachwood Entertainment, had the task of coming up with a song to engage the voters and inform them about voting in a fun way. So we took on the challenge of crafting that. I'm a music producer and DJ by trade, so I just wanted to have some upbeat music behind it, and I tapped my friend Eva the Prince, who wrote the majority of the lyrics, and we worked on it together. And we came up with the main theme of cast your voice. We felt that a lot of people out there, even if you're not familiar with voting, have a voice, and it needs to be heard. And so we thought that was pretty catchy, and so we worked on the hook and sent it over, and we went back and forth, and we came up with a little song that hopefully informs the public more about the voting process more than they know. I mean, it helped me because just a regular person, it's always like this invisible wall with how voting works. You assume things, you hear things, and so when something is in a medium of music and with the music video, it helps bridge that gap in the information. And so hopefully whenever you hear the song, whether it's being played on the radio or in an ad, it's like a Batman signal. It's like, oh, it's time to vote. and so that's how we came up with it.
You're the new age Mr. Bill.
Oh, thank you. So here's the video. Cash them.
It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. You know you got a choice to really make the rules. Gotta cash your ballot, gotta pay your dues. You decide the issues if they win or lose. Research every candidate before you choose. First thing first though, check your info. Gotta register for the designated place. Get a sample, a good example of all the info. Come election day, can make it to the polls in a mirror to let you know. An absentee ballot is another way to go. Even if you're a felon, did you know it's still hope? Vote.boommo.org, there you go. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. Come on, time and prepare. Could be lines everywhere. It's your right. Don't be scared. Catch your voice. Let them hear. Come on, time and prepare. Could be lines everywhere. It's your right. Don't be scared. Catch your voice. Let them hear you. Address check. Gotta find a post near you. ID check so they know that it's the real you. Research check. Candidates check. Official ballot check. Catch your voice. Let them hear you. Address check. Gotta find a post near you. ID check so they know that it's the real you. Research check. Candidates check. Official ballot check. Catch your voice. Let them hear you. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard. It's time to vote now. Let's get your vote down. Catch your voice now. Let yourself be heard.
Bravo.
That was wonderful. Thank you. That was fantastic. Excellent job. Excellent job. Wonderful. And hopefully we'll reach some folks and encourage them, to help them to see that they absolutely can. So I want to thank our wonderful, wonderful guests, A, for taking the time with us this evening, but B, for everything that you all do to make sure that our democracy functions as it is intended. So we thank you both so very much. Tyrone, thank you for just pouring into other people and encouraging them, to go out and to vote, because it is so very, very important. And Brianna, love, much love for you and all that you do. So thank you all for watching. And everyone, please have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night,
you.
all. Be
Bye
safe.
now. Bye now. Be safe.
Take care.